The alarm blared through the United Nations Emergency Center at 3 in the morning. Dr. Marcus Webb nearly spilled his coffee as he rushed to his console. Red lights flashed across every screen in the room. Something was very wrong. "What's happening?" asked General Patricia Stone as she burst through the doors, still buttoning her uniform jacket. Marcus pointed at the main display. Every power grid on the planet just received a shutdown command, not a request, a command. Someone is trying to turn off all the lights. 3 weeks earlier, humanity had made first contact with an alien species called the Vothrak. Their massive ships had appeared in orbit, blocking out portions of the sky. They had sent messages in perfect English, claiming they came in peace. They offered trade, technology, and friendship. World leaders had welcomed them with open arms. But Marcus had noticed something strange in the data streams. Hidden codes buried in the communication signals. Patterns that did not belong. He had reported his findings to General Stone, who had quietly assembled a team of engineers and scientists to investigate. Now his worst fears were coming true. "Can we stop it?" General Stone demanded. Marcus shook his head. "The command came from our own satellites. They've been compromised. We have maybe 6 minutes before every power plant on Earth shuts down. Without electricity, hospitals would go dark. Life support systems would fail. Water treatment plants would stop working. Billions of people would be without heat in winter and cooling in summer. Food would spoil. Communication would collapse. Civilization as humanity knew it would end." "Get me Dr. Chen," General Stone ordered. Dr. Liu Chen was a 62-year-old electrical engineer from Shanghai. She had spent 40 years designing power grids and backup systems. She was also the smartest person Marcus had ever met. Liu appeared on the video screen within seconds. Her silver hair was messy and she wore a worn bathrobe, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "I see the problem," Liu said without waiting for an explanation. "The shutdown command uses our own security protocols against us. Very clever, but they made one mistake." "What mistake?" Marcus asked. "They assumed our systems were properly connected." Liu smiled. "I designed these grids 20 years ago, and I built in deliberate inefficiencies, gaps in the network, places where old technology still runs because nobody wanted to pay to upgrade it." She pulled up a schematic on her screen and shared it with the emergency center. "The command will propagate through the main digital systems, but it will hit dead ends at these 17 junction points. Old analog switches that don't respond to digital commands. They're like firewalls made of rust and stubbornness." "Will that be enough?" General Stone asked. "It will buy us time, maybe 12 hours. The shutdown will cascade slowly instead of happening all at once." Liu's expression grew serious. "But we need to do 2 things in those 12 hours. First, disconnect the compromised satellites from our grid systems. Second, find out how they got in and close the door." Marcus was already typing. "I can work on the satellite problem. I'll need access to every major ground station." "You'll have it," General Stone said. "What else?" Liu held up a thick folder. "I need people. The best engineers from every country. We have to rebuild our security architecture from scratch, and we have to do it while keeping the lights on." Within the hour, calls went out to engineers around the world. Dr. James Okonkwo in Lagos was pulled from his daughter's birthday party. Anna Kowalski in Warsaw left her hospital bed despite recovering from surgery. Raj Patel in Mumbai abandoned his honeymoon. They all answered because they understood what was at stake. The Vothrak watched from orbit. Commander Zix reviewed the data with satisfaction. The humans had detected the attack, but it was too late. Their primitive civilization would collapse within days. Then the harvest could begin. "The power grid disruption is proceeding," reported Subcommander Tall. "However, we are detecting unusual resistance in 17 sectors." "Resistance?" Zix's 4 eyes narrowed. The humans have no defense against our infiltration codes. We spent 3 solar cycles developing them specifically for their technology. Unknown, Commander. The systems in those sectors are not responding to our commands at all. It is as if they cannot hear us. Zix waved a tentacle dismissively. Mechanical failures. Their equipment is inferior. The disruption will spread on its own. On the surface, humans were not waiting for the disruption to spread. They were fighting back. In the basement of the emergency center, Marcus had assembled a team of 7 young programmers. They called themselves the Patch Brigade because their job was to patch holes in sinking ships while the ship was still sinking. The satellites are using triple encryption, reported Tyler, a 24-year-old from Chicago. Military grade. It'll take weeks to crack. We don't have weeks, Marcus said. We don't even have days. Think differently. What's the simplest way to stop a satellite from sending commands? A quiet voice spoke up from the corner. It belonged to Yuki Tanaka, a 19-year-old intern from Tokyo. Everyone turned to look at her. We point them somewhere else, Yuki said. The satellites need to aim their antennas at ground receivers. If we change their pointing coordinates, they'll be talking to empty space. Tyler shook his head. We can't access the pointing controls. They're locked out. We don't need to access them, Yuki replied. We just need to tell them they're in the wrong position. The satellites have attitude sensors that detect their orientation. If we send false data to those sensors, the satellites will think they're pointed wrong and automatically correct themselves. In the wrong direction. Marcus stared at her. That's either brilliant or insane. It's both, Yuki admitted, but it might work. They got to work. Yuki wrote the spoofing code while Tyler and the others figured out how to transmit it. They used old radio dishes that had been sitting abandoned at university research stations. Equipment so outdated that the Vothrak had not even bothered to compromise it. By dawn, they had repositioned 37 satellites. The shutdown commands were now being broadcast to the Pacific Ocean. But this was only the first battle in a much longer war. Across the world, Liu Chen coordinated the larger effort. She had engineers in 40 countries working around the clock. Some were physically rebuilding control systems. Others were writing new security protocols. A group in Brazil figured out how to use shortwave radio as a backup communication network when the internet became unreliable. The key was redundancy. The Vothrak had designed their attack assuming that human systems were interconnected and centralized. They had studied Earth's technology for months, mapping every network and connection. They had created the perfect weapon to collapse it all at once. They had not anticipated that humans were suspicious by nature. Every good engineer builds with failure in mind, Liu told her team during a video conference. We assume that anything that can break will break, so we create backups for our backups. We leave room for improvisation. We make our systems ugly and complicated because elegant systems have single points of failure. General Stone watched the status boards as green lights slowly replaced red ones. They underestimated us, she said. They underestimated our paranoia, Marcus corrected. Same thing, really. But the Vothrak were not finished. They were just getting started. In orbit, Commander Zix studied the reports with growing frustration. The human power grid was still functioning. Their communication networks were degraded but not destroyed. Something was wrong. Analyze their response patterns, Zix ordered. They are adapting faster than projected. How is this possible? Sub-Commander Tal's tentacles trembled as she delivered the news. Commander, the humans are not responding as a unified system. They are responding as millions of independent agents, each making decisions without central coordination. Our models assumed hierarchical control structures. Clarify. The humans are improvising. Each technical specialist is solving local problems without waiting for orders. They are creating new solutions that did not exist an hour ago. Our attack scenarios did not account for this level of distributed creativity. Zix considered this information. The Vothrak had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy. All of them had centralized leadership structures. Destroy the center and the rest would fall. But these humans operated differently. Cut off one part and the others kept working. Kill the head and the body grew a new one. This would require a different approach. Prepare the second phase, Zix commanded. If we cannot collapse their systems, we will destroy them directly. Weapons began charging in the orbiting ships. Far below, Dr. Liu Chen looked up at the night sky through her office window. She could not see the alien ships, but she knew they were there, watching, planning. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message from Marcus Webb. We stopped the first wave. What do we do about the second? Liu typed her response. We do what engineers always do. We adapt, we improvise, and we build. She did not know what the Vothrak would try next, but she knew one thing with certainty. Whatever it was, human beings would figure out how to survive it. They always had. They always would. That was simply what humans did. The sun rose over a world that was still standing. Power plants hummed. Hospitals stayed lit. People went about their lives, unaware of how close they had come to disaster. And in basements and laboratories around the globe, engineers kept working, preparing for whatever came next. The first attack had failed. The war was just beginning. The second wave came without warning. Plasma beams struck from orbit, targeting power plants and communication hubs across 5 continents. Cities went dark. Millions of people felt the ground shake as critical infrastructure exploded. Dr. Marcus Webb watched the destruction unfold on monitors that were still working. They're not trying to hack us anymore, he said grimly. They're trying to burn us. General Stone was already on the phone with the Joint Chiefs. Military responses were being coordinated, but human weapons had limited range. The Vothrak ship sat comfortably in high orbit, well beyond the reach of missiles designed to fight Earth-based enemies. We need to buy time, General Stone announced to the emergency center. Every hour we survive gives our people more chance to adapt. In a converted warehouse in Detroit, a woman named Maria Santos was already working on something that might help. Maria was 51 years old, a former automotive engineer who now designed solar panels. She had been watching the news when the first attack happened, and she had an idea. The plasma beams are hot, Maria explained to her team of 12 volunteers. Really hot. Hot enough to melt steel, but they have to travel through atmosphere to reach us. That means they lose energy on the way down. Her assistant, a young man named David Park, nodded slowly. Like a meteor burning up on entry, the air slows it down. Exactly, and we can make the air work harder. Maria held up a spray bottle filled with silver particles, reflective aerosols. We release them in the upper atmosphere above critical targets. The particles scatter the plasma energy in all directions. Instead of a focused killing beam, you get a diffuse warm glow. Will it work? David asked. I have no idea, but we're going to find out. Within hours, Maria's team had contacted meteorologists, pilot associations, and anyone else who might help. Crop dusters were loaded with reflective compounds. Weather balloons were rigged with spray mechanisms. Amateur rocket clubs prepared launches from fields and parking lots. The Vothrak detected the activity but dismissed it as meaningless. Subcommander Tal reported the findings to Commander Zix with confusion. The humans are releasing metallic particles into their atmosphere, Tal said. The purpose is unclear, perhaps a religious ritual. Many primitive species perform such actions when facing extinction. Continue the bombardment, Zix ordered. Focus on their military installations. The next plasma beam struck toward a naval base in San Diego. It entered the cloud of reflective particles that Maria's network had released 2 hours earlier. The beam scattered like sunlight through a prism, spreading across 300 square kilometers. The naval base felt a gentle warmth, nothing else. Commander Zix stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. What happened? The beam dispersed, Commander. The particles in the atmosphere deflected it. Impossible. Calculate the amount of material needed to stop our weapons. They would need millions of tons. They are not stopping the weapons, Commander. They are spreading them thin, diluting them. The energy is the same, but the concentration is too low to cause damage. Zix's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. Then increase power, overwhelm their defenses. Commander, increasing power will drain our reserves significantly. We planned for a quick conquest. Extended bombardment was not anticipated. On Earth, the news spread through the networks that still functioned. Humans could defend against the plasma weapons. Not perfectly, but enough. The knowledge gave people hope. Dr. Liu Chen coordinated the next phase of adaptation. We need to make this sustainable, she announced in a global video call with engineers and scientists from 38 countries. Maria's solution works, but we can't rely on crop dusters and weather balloons forever. A voice spoke up from the crowd. It belonged to Dr. Amir Hassan, a chemical engineer from Egypt. The reflective particles are expensive to produce, but I have been working on a different approach, electromagnetic interference. He shared his screen, showing diagrams of modified radar systems. The plasma beams are channeled by magnetic fields generated by the Vothrak ships. If we disrupt those fields, the beams lose coherence. They scatter on their own, without needing particles in the atmosphere. How do we disrupt magnetic fields in orbit? Someone asked. We don't. We create local interference patterns at ground level. The beams interact with our interference as they pass through. It's like putting static on a radio signal. Liu studied the diagrams carefully. This would require a network of transmitters, thousands of them. Correct, but they can be small. Cell phone tower size. We could retrofit existing infrastructure. Another engineer, Dr. Elena Volkov from Russia, added her thoughts. I can design the transmitter components using standard materials, nothing exotic. We could manufacture them in any moderately equipped factory. The pieces started coming together. Maria's atmospheric particles would provide immediate defense, while Hassan and Volkov's electromagnetic system was deployed. Multiple layers of protection, each backing up the others. Commander Zix received reports of the human activity with growing unease. This species was not behaving correctly. They should have panicked by now. They should have surrendered or collapsed into chaos. Instead, they were building things, organizing things, fighting back in ways that made no sense. Explain their behavior, Zix demanded of the ship's sociologist. The sociologist, an elderly Vothrak named Kel, studied the data with growing fascination. Commander, I believe we have misclassified this species. We categorized them as Type 3, hierarchical industrial, but their response patterns suggest something else entirely. Which classification? Kel hesitated. Type 7, Commander, adaptive swarm intelligence. A murmur ran through the command deck. Type 7 species were rare and extremely dangerous. They had no central point of failure. Each individual could function independently while still contributing to collective goals. Only 2 other Type 7 species had ever been encountered, and the Vothrak had avoided both of them. That is impossible, Zix said flatly. Type 7 species do not develop on single planets. They require multiple worlds to distribute their population. Perhaps our classification system is incomplete, Commander. The humans show all the behavioral markers, distributed decision-making, rapid adaptation, resource sharing without central control. They are even creating new defensive technologies faster than we can analyze them. Zix considered the implications carefully. If the humans were truly Type 7, then standard conquest protocols would not work. The Vothrak would need to either destroy the entire planet or find a different strategy entirely. "Prepare the kinetic bombardment system," Zix ordered. "We will target their population centers directly. Enough rocks falling from the sky will end this, regardless of their classification." The weapons officer acknowledged the command but noted a concern. "Commander, kinetic bombardment will destroy the biological resources we came to harvest. The mission parameters specified minimum damage to the population." "Mission parameters have changed. Prepare the weapons." On Earth, astronomers noticed the change in the Vothrak ship's positions. They were moving into bombardment formation. Amateur observers shared the news on surviving social media platforms. Dr. Marcus Webb called an emergency meeting. "They're going to drop rocks on us," he explained. "Asteroids, space debris, whatever they have, it's basically impossible to defend against." General Stone looked at the assembled team: engineers, scientists, programmers, and soldiers. "How impossible? Give me a number." A young physicist named Dr. Sarah Ackafer spoke up. "Kinetic impactors are simple physics. Mass times velocity equals destruction. A 10-meter rock traveling at orbital velocity carries more energy than a nuclear bomb, and they can drop hundreds of them. So it's completely impossible." "Almost completely," Sarah paused, "but almost is not the same as completely." She pulled up her research notes. "I study asteroid deflection. It was theoretical work, preparation for natural impact events. We have some techniques that might work if we can scale them up very quickly." "Explain," General Stone ordered. "There are three main approaches. First, nuclear detonation near the asteroid to push it off course. We have the weapons, but we can't deliver them to orbit against hostile opposition. Second, gravitational tractors. We park a heavy object near the asteroid and our gravity slowly pulls it away. Too slow for this situation. Third, kinetic impact. We hit the rock with something fast and knock it off course." "Can we hit fast-moving targets in space?" Marcus asked. Sarah shook her head. "Not with existing missiles, but maybe we don't have to use missiles." She shared her screen, showing diagrams of electromagnetic launch systems. "Rail guns. We've been developing them for naval applications. They can accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds using magnetic fields. If we build them big enough and aim them at the right angle, we might be able to launch interceptors into the path of incoming objects." "How big is big enough?" General Stone asked. "Very big, kilometers long, and we'd need several of them positioned around the globe." The room fell silent. Building kilometer-long rail guns while under attack seemed impossible. Dr. Liu Chen broke the silence. "We have 72 hours before they can position for bombardment. I've been doing some calculations. We can't build new rail guns in that time, but we might be able to repurpose something that already exists." She displayed a map of the world with several locations highlighted. Particle accelerators, the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, Fermilab in Illinois, several others. They're designed to accelerate subatomic particles, but the same principles apply to larger objects. We'd need to modify them heavily, but the basic infrastructure is there. "Can it be done in 72 hours? Marcus asked. "It can't be done by normal engineering standards, but nothing we've accomplished in the last 3 days has been by normal standards." Liu looked around the room. "We need every engineer in the world working on this, every factory producing components, every volunteer helping where they can." General Stone nodded. "You'll have everything you need." The call went out. Engineers abandoned their normal projects. Factories retooled their production lines. Scientists who had spent their careers in competition now shared their knowledge freely. The entire world united around a single goal: survival. At the Large Hadron Collider, Dr. Pierre Dubois coordinated the conversion efforts. Thousands of workers swarmed over the facility, making modifications that would have taken years under normal circumstances. They worked without sleep, sustained by coffee, determination, and fear. The magnetic coils need to be reversed, Peer explained to his team. We're not accelerating particles around a ring anymore. We're launching projectiles in a straight line. Think of it as the world's biggest cannon. What about power consumption? Asked one of his assistants. We'll need every watt we can find. Switzerland has already diverted power from across the country. France and Germany are contributing as well. When we fire this thing, lights will dim across half of Europe. Similar scenes played out at facilities around the world. Each location faced unique challenges. Each team found unique solutions. They communicated constantly, sharing breakthroughs and warning about failures. In orbit, Commander Zix watched the human activity with a mixture of confusion and concern. They were clearly building something, but the Vothrak analysis could not determine what. They are modifying their particle acceleration facilities, Subcommander Tall reported. Purpose unknown. The modifications do not correspond to any weapon system in our databases. Could they be building something new? That is the most likely explanation, Commander, but it is unprecedented. No species has ever developed new weapons technology while under active attack. The cognitive resources should be fully occupied with survival responses. Zix considered this carefully. How long until kinetic bombardment readiness? 57 hours, Commander. Then we have 57 hours to understand what they are building. Deploy surveillance drones. I want constant monitoring of all human technical activities. The drones descended through Earth's atmosphere, spreading across the globe. They recorded everything: factory floors, research facilities, even basement workshops where amateur inventors were contributing their own ideas. What they found disturbed the Vothrak analysts deeply. Commander, the humans are displaying impossible coordination, Kell reported. Facilities on opposite sides of their planet are working in perfect synchronization. They are sharing resources, knowledge, and even personnel through a network that has no apparent center. How is this possible without a central authority? They have thousands of central authorities. Each local leader makes decisions for their area while communicating with all other local leaders. It is extraordinarily inefficient compared to proper hierarchical structures, but it provides remarkable resilience. We cannot disrupt their coordination by eliminating any single point. Zix's tentacles twitched with frustration. Then we eliminate all points, proceed with bombardment preparation. We will end this species the simple way. Commander, there is another concern. The modifications to their particle accelerators suggest they may be attempting to create orbital launch capability. If they succeed, they could threaten our ships directly. Impossible. Converting ground-based facilities to space weapons would require precision beyond their technical capability. Under normal circumstances, yes, but these humans are not operating under normal circumstances. They are operating under existential threat, and they appear to perform significantly better in such conditions. Zix reviewed the data personally. The sociologist was right. Every analysis of human behavior showed the same pattern. Push them into a corner and they became more dangerous, not less. Apply pressure and they accelerated their development. The harder the Vothrak tried to destroy them, the faster they evolved their defenses. It was a troubling realization. 40 hours before bombardment, the first converted accelerator fired a test shot. A small projectile, barely a kilogram, launched from Switzerland at 15 kilometers per second. It traveled straight up through the atmosphere and continued into space. The Vothrak tracked it with growing alarm. The projectile was too small and too fast for their defensive systems to intercept. It eventually burned up in the friction of the thin upper atmosphere, but the demonstration was clear. They can reach us, Tall confirmed. Their range is limited, but if they improve their accuracy, they could potentially damage our ships. Then we accelerate our timeline, Zix decided. Begin bombardment in 20 hours. We cannot give them more time to prepare. The change in timeline was detected by human observers almost immediately. Word spread through the global network. 20 hours, not 72. 20 hours to finish preparations that had seemed impossible even with 3 days. Dr. Liu Chen gathered the key engineers for a final coordination call. "We're out of time," she announced. "The accelerator conversions are only 60% complete. We need to make a decision. Do we try to finish everything, or do we focus on making what we have work better?" Maria Santos spoke up from Detroit. "Partial systems are better than no systems. If we can protect even some population centers, that's millions of lives saved." "Agreed," said Dr. Hassan from Egypt. "Let us prioritize completion of the most advanced facilities and accept that others will not be ready." It was a hard choice. Choosing which facilities to complete meant choosing which areas to protect, but there was no time for a perfect solution. There was only time for the best possible solution. The engineers made their choices and returned to work with renewed intensity. In basements around the world, ordinary people contributed in whatever way they could. Some manufactured components, others ran power cables. A teenager in Japan wrote software that improved targeting calculations by 3%. Every small improvement added up. Humanity faced its greatest test, and humanity was not giving up. With 6 hours remaining before the bombardment, Dr. Liu Chen received an unexpected message. It came through a frequency that should not have been accessible, transmitted in a code that took precious minutes to decrypt. The message was from the Vothrek ship. "We are impressed by your species' resilience," the message read. "Our initial assessment was incorrect. You are more capable than we anticipated. Therefore, we offer a negotiation. Surrender now and we will spare 80% of your population. Continue resisting and we will destroy you entirely. You have 1 hour to respond." Liu shared the message with General Stone and the other leaders. The response was unanimous. "Tell them we refuse," General Stone said. "We don't negotiate with percentages of human lives." Liu composed a response in the Vothrek communication format. "Your offer is rejected. We will defend ourselves." A simple message, a clear message, and a message that changed everything. Commander Zix read the human response with something approaching respect. "They are stubborn," he observed. "Foolish but stubborn." "Commander, perhaps we should reconsider," Kell suggested carefully. "A Type 7 species that refuses to surrender is extremely dangerous. Even if we destroy their planet, individuals may survive and spread. They could become a threat to Vothrek interests for generations." "What alternative do you suggest?" "Withdrawal. We report this planet as non-viable for harvest and return to the Empire. Let another fleet deal with them in a century when their technology has stabilized." Zix considered the option but rejected it. "If we withdraw, other species will learn that humans drove us away. The Empire's reputation will suffer. Conquered worlds may begin to question our dominance." "That is a political concern, Commander. I speak of practical survival." "Politics and survival are the same thing for an empire. No, we proceed with bombardment. We will destroy this planet and let the debris be a warning to others." With 3 hours remaining, the modified particle accelerators began their final tests. 8 facilities around the world had achieved operational status. 4 more were close but needed additional time they did not have. Each facility could launch approximately 1 projectile per minute once operations began. Against hundreds of incoming kinetic impactors, this was a pitiful rate of fire, but the engineers had developed a strategy to maximize their effectiveness. "We don't need to stop every rock," Dr. Sarah Ackefer explained during the final briefing. We need to stop the ones that will hit population centers. Our orbital tracking is excellent. We can predict impact points with high accuracy. We focus our fire on the most dangerous impactors and accept that some will get through. How many will get through? General Stone asked. Enough to cause catastrophic damage to unpopulated areas, tsunamis from ocean impacts, forest fires from land impacts, climate effects from debris. But if our tracking is accurate and our aim is true, we can protect the cities and the infrastructure we need to survive. And if our aim is not true? Sarah met the general's eyes directly. Then we keep firing until we run out of projectiles or they run out of rocks. Either way, we don't stop fighting. The countdown continued. Engineers made final adjustments. Operators ran last-minute simulations. Politicians gave speeches of encouragement to populations that already knew what was at stake. In the final hour, something unexpected happened. A Vothrak shuttle detached from the main fleet and began descending toward Earth. It broadcast no hostile signals. It simply fell toward the surface, landing in an empty field outside Geneva. The hatch opened and a single Vothrak emerged. It was Kel, the sociologist. "I request communication with your species representatives," Kel announced through a translation device. "I bring information that may help you survive." Dr. Marcus Webb was sent to meet the alien, accompanied by a heavy security team. He approached cautiously, ready for any trick. "Why are you here?" Marcus demanded. "Why would you help us?" Kel's tentacles rippled in what might have been a shrug. "I have studied your species for many cycles. I have developed what your people might call respect. You are not what we expected. You are something new, something that should not be destroyed simply because we do not understand it." "What information do you have?" Kel transmitted data to a portable device. "The bombardment targets, Commander Zix's attack plan in full detail, and something else, a weakness in our ship's defensive systems, the plasma vents. If you can hit them precisely, you can disable our weapons." Marcus reviewed the data rapidly. It was comprehensive, it was useful, and it was potentially a trap. "Why should we trust you?" "You should not," Kel replied, "but you have no other options. Use the information or ignore it. I have done what I can." The alien returned to its shuttle and departed, rising back toward orbit. Marcus watched it go, then ran for the communication center. The data from Kel spread through the global network. Engineers analyzed it, looking for signs of deception. They found none. Either it was genuine or it was a very sophisticated trap. "We use it," General Stone decided. "We're out of time for paranoia." The attack began at dawn, Greenwich Mean Time. Hundreds of kinetic impactors detached from the Vothrak fleet and began their descent toward Earth. Each one was a potential extinction-level event for whatever it hit. The particle accelerators opened fire. At CERN, Dr. Pierre Dubois called out targets as his operators aimed and fired. Impactor 7, bearing 035, range 200,000 kilometers. Fire. The accelerator hummed with power drawn from half a continent. A projectile launched at impossible speed, racing upward through the atmosphere. Seconds later, it struck the impactor dead center, shattering the rock into fragments too small to survive re-entry. Impactor 7 destroyed, targeting Impactor 12. Similar scenes played out at facilities around the world. Each successful intercept was a victory. Each miss was a potential catastrophe. The Vothrak had not anticipated this level of resistance. Their bombardment plan had assumed minimal opposition. Instead, they faced a coordinated defense that was destroying impactors faster than expected. "Increase bombardment rate," Commander Zix ordered. "Overwhelm their defenses." More impactors launched. The human operators pushed their systems to the limit, firing faster than safety protocols allowed. Equipment overheated. Components failed. Emergency repairs were conducted between shots. In Detroit, Maria Santos coordinated atmospheric defense for impactors that got through the accelerator fire. Her reflective particle network was not designed for kinetic impactors, but the electromagnetic interference system could disrupt their guidance if they had any. Most of these rocks are unguided, Maria reported. They're just falling, but some of them have small thrusters for course correction. We can scramble those. Do it, Liu Chen ordered. Every rock we deflect is lives saved. The battle continued for hours. Impactors fell. Most were destroyed or deflected. Some got through. A large rock struck the Pacific Ocean, generating a tsunami that devastated coastal communities in Japan and the Philippines. Another hit the Sahara Desert, creating a crater visible from space but killing no one. Through it all, the human defense held. And then Marcus Webb made a decision that changed the course of the battle. "We have the targeting data for their plasma vents," he announced during a brief lull in the fighting. "If we can hit those vents, we can disable their weapons." "Can our projectiles reach that far?" General Stone asked. "If we boost the power beyond safe limits, yes. The accelerators might not survive, but the projectiles will reach the ships." General Stone considered for exactly 2 seconds. "Do it." At 8 facilities around the world, engineers pushed their equipment past every safety margin. Warning lights blazed. Alarms screamed. And projectiles launched toward the Vothrak fleet at speeds nothing in Earth's history had ever achieved. Commander Zix detected the incoming fire too late. The first projectile struck the plasma vents of a support ship, tearing through the mechanism like it was made of paper. The ship's weapons went dead. 2 more projectiles followed, disabling 2 more ships. "Evasive action," Zix commanded. "All ships evasive action." The fleet began to move, but Vothrak ships were designed for orbital bombardment, not combat maneuvering. They were slow and clumsy compared to the tiny, fast projectiles racing toward them. Projectile after projectile found its mark. Plasma vents exploded. Weapons systems failed. Within an hour, half the Vothrak fleet was combat ineffective. On the command ship, Subcommander Tal approached Zix with a damage report. "We have lost the ability to continue bombardment, Commander. Our remaining weapons are insufficient to achieve mission objectives." Zix stared at the tactical display, watching as another support ship took a hit. "How is this possible? They are primitives. They had no space weapons 3 days ago." "They built them, Commander. They built them because they needed them." The battle lasted another 2 hours, but the outcome was decided. The Vothrak fleet, battered and broken, began preparations for withdrawal. They had come to harvest a primitive world. They had found something else entirely. "Transmit a message to the humans," Zix ordered finally. "Tell them we are withdrawing. Tell them this world is claimed under Vothrak protection, and no other Empire force will disturb them. That will make them a protectorate, Commander, part of our Empire. It will make them someone else's problem. Let the Council deal with them. I am done with this species." On Earth, the message arrived as the last impactor was destroyed. The alien fleet was leaving. The war was over. In emergency centers around the world, exhausted engineers and operators stared at their screens in disbelief. They had won. Against all odds, against an enemy with vastly superior technology, they had won. Dr. Liu Chen sat down heavily in her chair, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion of 3 days without sleep. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Marcus Webb stood beside her, watching the last Vothrak ships accelerate away from Earth. "They'll be back," he said. "Maybe not them, but someone. We're on the galactic map now. Then we'll be ready." Liu looked around at the faces of the people who had saved the world. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, volunteers, ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. If this proved anything, it proved that humans are very good at solving problems when we have to. General Stone approached them with a rare smile. The president wants to give speeches. The UN wants to hold ceremonies. The whole world wants to celebrate. They should celebrate, Liu agreed. But then we get back to work. We need to rebuild what was destroyed. We need to improve our defenses. And we need to learn everything we can about what's out there. Already working on it, Marcus said. The data Kel gave us includes star charts. We're not alone in the universe, and not everyone out there is hostile. There might be allies, trading partners, friends. Or more enemies. Yes, or more enemies, Marcus shrugged. Either way, we'll deal with it. That's what we do. The sun rose over a world that had changed forever. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had encountered aliens and defeated them. They had discovered that the universe was vast and dangerous and full of wonders. And they had discovered something else, something important. When pushed to the edge, when everything seemed impossible, humans could do incredible things. They could cooperate across borders and languages and cultures. They could build the impossible in impossible timeframes. They could look at a threat that should have destroyed them and say, "No, not today." Dr. Liu Chen watched the sunrise and felt a profound sense of pride in her species. They were flawed. They were often foolish. They spent far too much energy fighting among themselves. But when it mattered, when the stakes were survival itself, they came together. They became something greater than the sum of their parts. They became humanity. And humanity, it turned out, was not easy to defeat. In the months that followed, the world transformed. The technologies developed during the crisis became the foundation for new industries. The cooperation that had saved humanity continued, leading to unprecedented global projects. And in workshops and laboratories around the planet, engineers kept working, kept building, kept improving. Because they knew the truth now. The universe was watching. Other species were out there, some curious, some hostile, some indifferent. Earth was no longer an isolated world. It was part of a larger community, whether it wanted to be or not. And humans intended to be ready for whatever came next. Dr. Marcus Webb eventually wrote a book about the experience. He called it Engineering Survival. The dedication read, "To the engineers, scientists, and ordinary people who refused to accept the impossible, you saved us all." The book became required reading in schools around the world. Children learned about the Vothrek attack and the human response. They learned about Liu Chen's distributed coordination, about Maria Santos' atmospheric defense, about Sarah Ackafer's accelerator weapons, about Yuki Tanaka's satellite spoofing code that had started it all. They learned that heroes came in many forms, that intelligence was more powerful than weapons, that cooperation was more important than competition. And they learned that no matter what challenges the future held, humanity would face them together, because that was the human way: adapt, improvise, build, survive. The stars waited. Humanity was coming, and the universe would never be the same. On the edge of explored space, in a monitoring station older than most civilizations, an ancient intelligence observed the events on Earth with something like interest. It had watched countless species rise and fall across millions of years. Most followed predictable patterns. Most were unremarkable. But these humans, they were different. The intelligence made a note in its eternal records. Species shows unusual adaptive capability. Recommend continued observation. Potential for significant galactic impact in coming millennia. It was the highest classification the intelligence had ever assigned to a species so young. Earth didn't know it yet, but the real adventure was just beginning.